So I want to welcome you to the library's faculty webinar series on scholarly communication. And today we have 4 of my friends that get to come and join us and share a little bit about their scholarly communications beginnings and interests. And the speakers are Dr. Gina Piani, Dr. Tara Zolnikoff, Dr. Nilsa Thoros, and Dr. Mary Beth McCabe. And we're going to just go in the order that we are here. And so I'm going to turn this off, stop sharing, so that Gina can go ahead and get started and tell us a little bit about her research interest and process. Hi, Gina.
My name is Gina Piani, and I became a tenured track full-time faculty member in 1989. I was tenured at Northern Illinois University and again at Cal State Long Beach before coming to NU in 2009. I currently teach in the MPH program, and what I decided to focus on in this brief talk is what the assistant professor, me, wishes that she had known back in 1989. As an insecure member of the faculty, I always thought that everyone else was doing so much more than I was doing. They were publishing every week, they read every journal article published, and I always felt that I was rushing to keep up and I wasn't as good. That insecurity, which I own, was also fueled by senior faculty who, as I would say, puffed themselves up, acting so superior. So what I'm here to tell you is that now that I'm a senior faculty, we're just as insecure as the rest of you on publishing and scholarship, if not more insecure. Now we may feel that we can't keep up with the newly minted faculty who have a newer set of skills. So I want to tell you a different message, and that is that we need to stop tearing each other down, criticizing the quality of the research, criticizing the quality of the journals and conferences. What you should know is that we have had more rejections than publications. We had to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and sometimes things didn't get published. The articles we publish haven't all changed the world, and we're insecure too. So my experience in scholarship is peer-reviewed professional presentations, peer-reviewed publications, and some limited grants. So let me tell you about my first presentation. I was at the American Public Health Association back in 1987. I was a doctoral student presenting the preliminary part of my dissertation on hypertension education for African American elderly. I knew my research, but I was still petrified. I was scheduled second in a panel after a doctor who was a combination of Adonis, Albert Einstein, and Jerry Seinfeld. Okay, maybe I exaggerate the qualities in my mind. So he gave his presentation about treating hypertension, and you could see my heart beating out of my chest from the back of the room. Luckily, I had memorized my first 2 sentences. I took a nice deep cleansing Lamaze breath, and everything was fine. I had memorized my last sentence. I reminded myself that I knew what I was talking about, and I fielded questions. Some, I have to admit, were like grenades being launched, but most of them were genuine and supportive. The first presentation was the worst, and things got better after that. So my advice for giving a presentation is to be prepared, be confident, write out your first 2 sentences so you have them there in front of you, memorize them, and your last sentence. Be as natural and conversational as you can be in the middle, and keep to your time allotted, because you'll get the other people upset, or you won't get to say your point. They'll cut you off. My first publication was based on my dissertation, like most of us. I submitted. I was asked for minimal revisions, and I literally did cartwheels down the hall outside my faculty office. Yes, office, walls and all. After that, for the first 2 years, when I received a rejection, I pouted. I threw the letter, yes, letter before email, in a file and never looked at it again. I wasted so much work. My mentor, Olive Kimball, a very rare department chair, really wanted me to succeed. Her idea was that she had hired me and wanted me to get tenure. She gave me the talk, which is about you need to rewrite and don't give up. I didn't always listen, and it cost me some publications, and I really wish I had listened. So my advice for publications is to always be curious. Keep searching for answers. The librarians at NU can help you to make effective, efficient searches of the literature. And those will help you to determine the science, the next step in the science. Develop surveys. The IRB can help with that. Examine existing data. Every 2 years, the California interview survey, health interview survey answers are released for public use. And I get so excited to dive into this data. I know, I'm a geek. I can't wait to run some SAS codes and see if there's patterns. Grant writing was never much of a priority for me. I received several grants to deliver services when I worked for the Cook County Department of Public Health, and they took a lot of time. I always felt like we were in a crunch to develop the multiple copies and appendices. Yes, this was before electronic submissions. And I never felt like we were able to give the application enough polish. So as a faculty member, I put more priority into curriculum development and mentoring students and faculty, and not grant funding. So you'll have to find expertise elsewhere for grant writing. One of my traits in my public health career is that I'm interested in all things public health. Maternal and child health, epidemiology, environmental health, addiction, chronic diseases, academic pursuits, you name it, I'm interested in it and curious. This may have been a downfall if I stayed with a research-focused institution, because they look for focus. However, it's kept me fresh and I'm always learning new things. And I've done some cognitive restructuring on my insecure, defeatist thoughts of not being good enough and not being focused enough, and have decided to label myself versatile. How you treat yourself and your inner voice is so important. So I want to go through a few types of research that I have done, maybe to spark some ideas or perhaps as a catalyst for some collaboration. For survey research, I teamed up with a statistician. We surveyed undergrad students at Cal State Long Beach about their drinking behaviors. That was one of my first IRB experiences. They're so creative, thinking about all the possibilities of ways that this, what I thought was just an innocent survey, could possibly harm students. We would have discussions. What if somebody ran into the classroom and grabbed the survey and it indicated illegal activity? And then, gotta love IRB, but they are there to protect human subjects. Program evaluation is one of my passions. This could explain why I'm interested in assessment. It's important to evaluate programs to see if they're effective, who's benefiting, which components could be replicated. often with pre and post test, sometimes comparative design. Systematic analysis is a little different than a typical literature review. I recommend that you follow PRISMA guidelines. I've had a few systematic analyses published regarding maternal mortality and effective interventions. There are data out there ready for you to examine. Secondary analysis allows you to bypass your own survey development and IRB processes. I've examined the CHIS data for correlates of psychological distress, also mental health and chronic diseases. I've analyzed national data on psychiatric hospital admission among the elderly. I've examined WHO health indicators by nation. For other types of research, I recommend using templates and theories. I mean, who among us is really going to develop a new theory or a new paradigm? I've recently added qualitative research to my toolkit. I've purchased Atlas TI-8 with my faculty development funds. It allows me to analyze transcripts from focus groups and key informant interviews. I applaud the NU faculty and Robin for hosting this forum. We all need a safe forum to discuss our ideas for research, our research in progress, our rejected research, our resubmissions. We need to declare a ceasefire and help each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Really appreciate you being willing to take the first off here and to get us started. Tara, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. And let's see, I was going to share yours for you.
All right.
All right, we're good. Go for it.
Okay. So my name is Tara, and today Robin asked us to talk about our research, successes, barriers, and lessons learned. So that's kind of exactly what I'm going to do. Robin, you want to? So like Gina, maybe this is like a global health thing. I'm also interested in a lot, and I like that, saying that we're versatile. That makes it sound better. I do work in water, climate change, HIV, AIDS, Ebola, chronic disease, cancer, access to healthcare, and more, like way more. I didn't want to list it all because then it started to sound weird, like eating disorders and all these. I was like, this list is weird. Teaching philosophies, different random ideas that I have that I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think anyone's ever done anything with that. Let's see where I can bring it. But generally, global health is my work. So next slide, please. So my successes, I have published 18 papers since 2012, and 13 were first author papers. 3 of these were in the American Journal of Public Health, which is one of the biggest public health journals that we can publish in. One was with a student in AIDS and Behavior, which was a big impact factor journal. And I was pretty proud of that because that was my first mentoring experience. And I had a first author single paper in Science and the Total Environment, which was an impact factor of 3.9. That was the first paper I ever wrote. And so I really didn't even know that much about publishing and impact factors. And I think I got really, really lucky in the first run. I also have 9 papers under review right now in journals. I just finished writing my first book. It was under contract with Palgrave Macmillan, and that will be published this year. It's a single author book, and the first of its kind actually, on environmental health and autoethnographies. There are 11 chapters that I wrote, and it took me like a year. I've presented at 10 conferences, 4 have been international. I'm on the editorial board and an ad hoc reviewer for 14 journals, including an associate editor at the Extractive Industries and Society. And then I also have a nonprofit in Kenya called the Shepherd's Village. So I thought I could go through some of my barriers that I've experienced while doing all of this stuff. I spend a lot of time on publications. First of all, I feel like in academia, you can put yourself in different subsets. One is in like service, one is in teaching, one is in publishing and research, and one is in admin. And you can find yourself like putting the bulk of your time in certain areas versus different ones. And I put a lot of my time into my research. And I think it's actually important to kind of find a balance and moderation. And that's definitely been something that I've had to work on. Working with others is difficult for me. Hence, I think the number of single author publications that I have. I find it so much easier to just write my paper and submit it. I've been working on this eating disorder paper. I think I wrote it 4 or 5 years ago, and we're gonna resubmit it, like we're still working on it. And it's so frustrating because I don't work like that. So that's definitely been a barrier for me. So time and communication, working with others. Also, there's a lot of projects. You can find yourself kind of buried in all your projects and have like note cards like this that just have people's names next to them and projects that you're kind of working on with them because you have no idea. I'm just like, oh gosh, I don't even know what I'm working on. I forgot to email that person. You can have family and work-life imbalances. I think that's probably common in academia. Finding happiness in your successes when projects are forever ongoing. I feel like I don't spend that moment of having and finding happiness because we're sort of forced to publish and write books and do all these things. So when I get the offer, I was just offered to do a second book, and it was more like, oh, okay, good, now I can write, instead of like, you were just offered a second book contract. Like I should be celebrating. I should be happy that, you know, my work is out there. And I really have lost that balance between being happy with where I am and where I'm going. IRBs are a barrier because they take so long and they're so frustrating. But we have a great IRB people at NU, and I think we're very lucky to have them. Grants are annoying and we're supposed to do them, but like it's hard to find time because I'd rather publish papers, but you can't publish, you don't have grants. And so finding that balance between like working on grants. And then lastly, a big barrier for me is administration, because I'm not an admin person. I want to be locked away in my office by myself, working on all my work on my single author publications. Like I just want to be in my own little hole. And I don't like having to go through hoops or ask people to like do different things. So that is a big barrier for me personally. So the next slide I have, and the last slide, is actually just some lessons I've learned from all of this. So the first one is time, and I think it's the most important. I think you need to take time away from work to be with family and enjoy hobbies. And don't feel guilty when you're doing them. Exercise and go outside and breathe real air and put that little Fitbit stepper on, because you're going to realize that you've been sitting at your computer all day and you've only walked 100 steps and it's 2 o'clock. So, you know, go outside and exercise. Pile it on. I get buried in projects, but you can pile on projects because in academia, things trickle. I've had a paper under review for 1.5 years. That's a trickle. I've been working on another paper for 5 years. So it's no wonder that I have so many projects going on, because things move slow. Standards, set the bar high. I've always wanted to write a book, and now I'm about to publish it, and I'm going to use it in my class. So, you know, think that you can do it, and you can certainly do it. There are a lot of people that will help you too if you want to. And be happy. Don't feel dispirited or dejected from slow moving progress or rejections, which I get all the time. I literally am like, oh, rejection, like it doesn't even faze me. But I remember when I used to cry. It wasn't that long ago, but you know, once you get so many of them. Communicate with whoever you're working with, even if it's people in your department or colleagues. Send bi-weekly or monthly short emails to check on projects, report, or just report in. And then also celebrate your wins, which is something that I continue to need to work on. So that's all I have. So thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to email.
And before you go, tell us about this lovely picture. Is this from your shepherd?
Yeah. So I do, a lot of my research is autoethnographic, so I actually experience what people are going through. So in this is actually a publication that I got. It was called My Walk to Water, and I walked to gather water with women in Kenya from the Maasai tribe. I actually have my nonprofit in this village too, so it was fun.
Okay, I'm only just a little bit jealous. And Nelsa, I have the world's shortest memory. Did you want me to bring up the PowerPoint, or you've got it there?
I got it.
Okay.
I'll share it. Let's see. Well, unfortunately, I had to follow Jean and Tara with my little thing. So I'm Nilsa Forces, and I joined National in 2013, and I retired from public education in 2004 officially. So I came to higher ed in 2004, and I'm a full professor. And I wanted to share a little bit about my journey. So when I joined higher ed, I just want to share a little bit about my personal life. My mother was already a dean of education. So I had a pretty good idea about the insights of what's expected, the script, the hidden script of higher ed, because I watched my mother go through the whole process of getting a doctorate. When I was 15, I would help her type and the typewriter. I got a brand new electric one from Sears. I always remember that. And so, but I didn't know the insights, all about the drama, the rejection. And my mother was a minority at the University of Buffalo. And English was her second language. And so it was really interesting as I grew up to watch that. So I set my goals. And my goal was learning from her was to prosper as a scholar in my field and mentor a next generation of scholars. I wanted to pay forward what I felt I was so fortunate to have through my mother. My mother passed away the day I was admitted into my doctoral program at the University of New Mexico. And it was a really big blow for me because I always counted that now, that she would shadow me as I went through the doctorate, and that didn't happen. So I had to really get busy here, get my doctorate at the University of New Mexico, and my dream was to one day be a professor. And as I worked for promotion and tenure and reappointment, it was really tricky. I worked for a tuition-driven university, a private university, Christian university. And within the year, I was assigned to be department chair, position I held for 14 years. Yet I was expected to complete all the scholarship, service, and teaching full load like anybody else, and go through the promotion process and everything else. So I had to really toughen up fast. So I went through the whole thing of being an assistant professor, associate professor, and I equate the day I became a full professor with high up there, like having my children, and it was a big day of my life because I fulfilled that big goal. One thing that I want to share that from my bag of tricks is that you need a navigation device. You need to have a plan, a map. You need to know exactly where you're going. This whole thing about that you have to have a focused research agenda is not true. The important thing is what you're passionate about and what you're interested that's your fuel. That's what you need. Uh, that's just a chatter talk in the back. Oh, you need to have a specific uh, research agenda. That doesn't work. The important thing is that balance. For example, if you're an assistant professor, you need to pay attention to what percent of your time you're going to focus on teaching, scholarship, and service. It says when you're an associate professor, you need to tighten it up more and start focusing more on scholarship and being very proactive about how are you going to address the service component, which you're going to be required to do anyways. So that means less sleeping at night. And then, of course, your passion of teaching. One thing that I learned when I was early on was the commitment to do research. What I would do is Fridays, I would not do any office hours. I would not agree to do anything, but it would be my day for research. You know, it was really hard with children, spouse, and personal life. So my Friday day has always been a Friday. I do anything that's related to research, not necessarily sit down and write. I'll read, I'll walk and think about it. I'll talk to somebody about my research, but that's my day for research. And you have to really understand that you can't go on this device though. Someday I'll do it. Someday I'm going to sit down and do it. There's no day of the week called Sunday. Someday. You got to specify that and make that commitment, because if you really want it, only you can make it happen. And then just stay firm with that date. And it's hard. The other trick that I have is mentoring. Find out all you can about mentorship. And mentor is a two-way partnership. I mentor, but I also have a network of mentors in my life from very early on. And I'll share a little bit about that. And it's not that somebody's over you and knows more than you or anything like that. It's really reciprocal. That you help each other and that you take turns supporting each other. And somebody might also be an expert in an area where you look up to. In my life, I have different environments where I mentor or I am mentored. For example, in 1994, when I joined University of New Mexico for my doctorate, my chair, the dissertation chair, she became my mentor. And it's been a lifelong relationship with her and her husband. They're very well known in the field. And every year when I go to a conference, I meet with them and they check on me and I check on them. And when I'm making big decisions in my job life, I always consult with them. So that's the type of mentoring. And they also look over my papers when I'm a little bit iffy before I turn it into an editor. In AERA, I've been part of AERA with my mother when she was part of AERA, and I belong to several SIGs. And I'm part of a bilingual SIG, which is one of my areas, special education and the mentoring SIG. And I'm part of the board and I do a lot of things, but I'm also mentored by people there and part of that community. I'm a member of that community. Also at the university, my mentor was my department chair since 2000. And till today, she's one of my closest allies. At the Commission of Teacher Education in California, I have a mentor. She used to be the commissioner, and she's now retired, but she's still my mentor. And a current one is my mentor too. And we're very close in terms of what are my professional moves and what I'm thinking about. And then there's another group, and it's an international global group of women faculty from around the world. All continents are represented except Antarctica. And I'm part of that group where I mentor them and they mentor me. And we only meet once a year in person, but we work together via internet. And we published several papers, and we've been rejected together and cry and all that. My advice is join and get involved. Unlike Tara, behind closed doors, yeah, that works for a certain personality. But it's also important to be part of a community and to be active in that community, to network with those people in that community and to make contributions in those organizations. I also strongly recommend, if you're an assistant professor, start off by, of course, publishing your dissertation and components of it, and further on your research, but also start with baby steps with a book review. A book review is a safe way to get published, and editors will provide you with templates and a lot of mentorship and support in how to get your feet wet. And the rejection is a minimum in that one. Join special interest groups and start looking into their publication systems, and start working with the editors. Just volunteer, serve in these committees, and volunteer to review the manuscripts, because that way you get the template and you get the insight of what are the rules for acceptance of these manuscripts. That's the best way to crack that code, being part of them. Not from an outside, but start infiltrating in the inside. My mother taught me that, by the way. Join LinkedIn. That's the best meta source of networking. Facebook page. I have a Facebook page, and I let certain people in and some people in those little circles, and we have a lot of deep, meaningful conversations about research. Join blogs, and don't get into fights. It's too public. Just join and have discussion. And Twitter. The main source of information I get for all my field discipline is in Twitter. I join different organizations, and it really keeps me informed. I recommend that you read Stephen King's book on writing. I included a PDF of the book here. It's a nonfiction, one of his few nonfiction. It's very genuine book about his journey as a writer, and he was an English teacher. And he talks a lot about all the rejections he went through, but he also talks about technical writing, and gives you good pointers of where to go for good references. And most importantly, I wouldn't be here, sitting here, without the librarians. And hats off. They're your best friend, and they're always right, and do whatever. Start off with the librarian, because they know where the bodies are, and they can give you the breadcrumbs to find the best resources. I'm showing you this because this is my formula. A little bit what Tara was talking about, and Gina. Whenever I put all my efforts for a presentation, I'm already looking at that paper as a future submission manuscript for publication. I am not going to waste my time on a presentation unless I'm seeing it down the road as a possible paper publication. So then, you got to start. It starts all with the IRB. So if you put all that effort for that IRB, you're going to be sure that you're going to push for it to get that publication. So the cycle goes like that. Presentation, possible manuscript, so get the IRB, get the publication. This is a sample of my presentations that later on became publications, but not all. There were also rejections. In terms of grants, I don't even want to talk about it, but it's a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of them do not get granted. And it's just something that you just have to do. But I have right now several chapters that have been published, but it took 3 years for this to happen. It started with the presentation. This one, in terms of bilingualism in Puerto Rico, it took a whole year just to get the data. This one, in terms of, if you notice, I've worked with Johannesson and Dickinson, and we did a case study, meta-analysis of the bilingual teacher education in the United States of all the public schools, public universities. And so we presented in 2 different organizations, national and international, and then we got it published. And so these are just examples of presentations that later on became publications. One thing that I would recommend on the dues is always have a clear plan where you're going, and have it organized so you know where you are and which one of the researches, because you're going to have some presentations, some for submission, and some that you're still working on it. So when you're working in a collaboration, I strongly suggest you have a contract. A contract is on a piece of paper where everybody spells out clearly who does what, when, and how, and who's going to be the first author, what the first author does, second author, third author, and then you just keep everybody accountable and keep meetings, an agenda, schedule for these meetings. Otherwise, it'll be months before you meet again, and it'll get cold. So keep that, really, first and second authors should be in charge of that. Avoid at all costs informal agreements between the authors. Keep that friendship and that collegiality out of it. This is about publishing. This is it's a different deal. It's business. So support each other, be nice, play nicely, but it's better to have it clearly defined rather than loosely. I strongly suggest that you do not allow colleagues to join your presentations if they haven't made contributions. It just leads to problems. So keep it very professional and high standards. And do not submit a manuscript without full consent of all the participants. That's also problematic. Again, start with your dissertation. You put all your energy in there, book reviews. Set up a goal to refine your research skills and learn more about data analysis and reporting findings. Once you get your doctorate, one thing that a lot of people, there's research on this, they put their manuscript away, they never look at it again. It's like it's done and good riddance, it gave birth to the baby. I say no. That's when you spiral in and you start refining those research skills and find out more about it. I became more expert in the area of mixed methodology. And the reason I did that was to push myself forward because I like to sit in doctoral committees and support and mentor future doctoral candidates. So in order to do that, I wanted to really learn more and to become an expert at that. So always push yourself. Read. Stephen King says that a good writer is an excellent reader. So you got to read and read from a critique perspective of how this writer, the technical writing, dissertation. I suggest that you learn about predatory publishers. That could be a big boo-boo in your life. Stay current with APA. The editor is always right. Don't put your energy in fighting with an editor. Just do it. Find out what they want, fix it, and get going. Later on, you can feel sorry for yourself. One of the things that I do is I'm constantly talking about my research because I can visualize it and then I get ideas as I talk about it and then I do it. So it becomes more real. Say it and then it'll happen. Be ready for feedback, bad or good, and the rejection. I haven't met anybody that hasn't been rejected. The act of writing is a process. So it's about writing and rewriting and writing again and revisions. Learn about the process as a writer and about publishing. So volunteer. Be selective about which conferences you go to and your publishers. That's about it.
Okay, and Nilsa, thank you for sharing. Okay, appreciate it. And I love where I see the overlaps of threads of the conversation as they've gone through. And I just find it fascinating. So thank you. And Mary Beth, I think that we're on schedule, and go ahead and have fun.
Oh, this is fun. So it's really a nice opportunity here for us to learn from each other. And I have just thoroughly learned a lot from you all in the last few minutes. So I appreciate that you came and you all had presentations. I did not prepare anything as a PowerPoint, but I have some ideas and some questions that I'd like to offer to you. So if that's okay, I'll just start off by saying that I am in the School of Business, and that my research has been results focused. And I did have a plan back in 1988, and I pulled that out this year, and I looked at it and I said, wow, you did that. And I'm not going to go into the details, but I was just kind of amazed at how this all happened because I really hadn't even looked at it. So I come from the world of business in that I am a very practical academic, I think is the word. I was an adjunct professor at 5 universities before coming to National University. That's over the last 30 some odd years. And I've been at NU since 2010 full time. And my interests are in marketing. I'm the academic program director for marketing, and I'm versatile as well. My current research, I'm really interested in sharing with you all because it's about marketing, but it's about how education is not really being looked at from a marketing perspective right now. And I'll go into some detail, and I'd love to share the research with you. I'm co-authoring a series of 3 papers with Richard Weaver. And what we looked at was how certain search terms were being called down from the search engines, and then looking at those results and finding out if they actually delivered what they intended to deliver. Further than that, we're looking at how they're appearing on social and how they're appearing on mobile. So we've stumbled into an area that nobody has looked at yet from our research. And Robin's, thank you, has been helping us for over a year on this. And I started this process with a white paper in 2012. And so that's one example. I've also done presentations abroad, as some of you have, international conferences where you go and present your research and get some ideas about how to improve it. And I really appreciate that, especially because it's usually very academic in nature. However, I've also presented at a number of large conferences, some conferences with 20,000 and 30,000 attendees, and spoken on business topics. And I'll go back to where my dissertation was. That was about the broadcasting industry, and the National Association of Broadcasters paid me for my dissertation. So my advice to young doctoral students is to find somebody in your industry who's willing to put money behind you. And therefore, you already have your first project and somebody that helped pay for your education. So the National Association of Broadcasters did that for me. And I wanted to, so I spoke at their conference in Las Vegas twice. So, and they usually draw hundreds of thousands. I mean, they're just, it's big. So I guess what I wanted to ask now, I've told you a little bit about my background and some of the marketing and some of the other things I'm working on. I'd like to, if I can, ask you all some questions, and so we can make this more interactive, okay? So I'm going to start out and ask a question, if I can, with Robin, if I have your permission. I'd like to ask Gina, what is Prisma? I have never heard of Prisma, and I'd like you to tell us what is that, please. Thank you.
Thanks. Prisma is a template for doing systematic analyses of the literature. So you follow along and it will tell you how to do keyword searches, inclusion, exclusion, and choose themes. And if you, in our field, if you don't use Prisma and you're trying to publish a literature review, it's going to come back and say, you need to beef up your methodology and use Prisma. So it's Tara, tell us what the acronym stands for.
I've never heard of it. So this is a possible topic, something that I need to know, and I appreciate the interaction here.
It's true. I've had reviewers come back and tell me my methodology needed to be changed into Prisma standards.
Well, if you can type something into the chat box for those who are watching this so we can get some more information, I think that would be great. So I'd also like to throw this out to the three of you. How do you get on an editorial board? What's a technique that you can use to get on that board, please?
I also have a question. How can you get off of an editorial board? I have, I'm not sure exactly how I got on, but I have been asked to review papers for decades. And recently I've been asked to be on so many. Today I was asked just 5 today. 5 every day in email. So some of them are not legitimate, I know. So I've just reviewed when they ask to review, I review and then become part of the editorial board. But you have to be really selective because right now you could be on 20.
You can get it through networking, as I mentioned, through the SIGs, different journals that you start volunteering. But you also have to have a list of who they are and where do you, and the key word is the name of the person sending you the email so that you know it's genuine, it's a good one. But how do you get onto the editorials? Through networking. That's one of your goals. So when you meet people and you interact in these professional associations, is that also when they start reading your work and you start developing a relationship with that editor, you can also let them know that you would be willing to make contributions, and they're listening to that. They'll like that. I belong to the NABE, National Association of Bilingual Educators, in their journal for about the last, I don't want to say 20 years, but yeah. And so they know that I'll only go look at 5 a year. So I let them just know this is my limit.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Well, if anybody has any other suggestions, I'm interested in finding out. I also want to concur that the library has been very helpful. And as another tip, I've used the Writing Center. So the Writing Center has helped me with my writing expertise in so many ways. And I just want to put a shout out for Shireen and all of those Writing Center people, because that's their job full time and they are wonderful. So I can't say enough. They actually helped me at this time last year. I was publishing my first book. The title is called Mobile Marketing Essentials. And when the 3 authors that I gathered together to write this book, I created the contracts, I negotiated the deal, and I was responsible for getting all the material together, as well as writing at least half of it. But those other experts I brought in were really, truly world-class leaders in the field, and I learned a lot from them. So it was a really good experience. We're now in 20 universities, and over 350 students have taken the course material, and that's only since August. So we just finished our 3rd update. So I wanted to again say thank you to the Writing Center, because they were able to see it from a user viewpoint that I didn't see it from. And even though it had 4 authors, there was so much more that we learned from each other. So that's been a really interesting process to go through. And also teaching from it, I think, was wonderful too. So Tara, I think you're going to really enjoy that experience down the road when you have yours published. So my first book was 1993. It was called The World's First Guide to Independent Travel. And I had Chuck Yeager do the introduction. And I saw it, a used copy offered on Amazon for $50. So there's something good there, I think, even though it was pre-internet days and I had traveled worldwide, including to Kenya by myself. So we can talk about that at some point, Tara. I love hearing stories of other people's travels. And that was a book of when I started my own company in 1993, I really had nothing to offer other than a lot of good sales experience. So I created a product so that I could use this kind of as a calling card for myself. And I sold 5,000 copies and all my own. So that was a really good experience for me to put a product out there and feel confident that I had done something like that. So if there isn't one at the library, Robin's going to get one so she can put it. And look forward to connecting with all of you on LinkedIn. My goal is 5,000. I'm at 4,920 right now. So I'm looking forward to more first connections with you and other colleagues. And thank you for this. If anybody has any other questions, please let's make this connection here.
Send me an invite. I'll join.
Absolutely, Nilsa.
Well, I love that we have talked about some of the faculty issues of collegiality and trust in research, and I think those are critical. I also agree that we have to keep an eye on the predatory publishers, even those who are looking for reviewers. They like to suck you in. Makes them look good. So be sure that you look to see who all the other reviewers are. And I'm a firm believer in the world today that with so much going open access, and a lot of people think that's a bad word anymore, it's not. But I think the industry needs to have a chance to grow up and get its roots and mature. So yes, there's some immature journals out there, some immature conferences, but they're also the predatory, and it's not easy to distinguish. So I want you just to be wise. So we have about 3 more minutes. Does anybody else have a question for each other?
I want to also know about Atlas TI-8. What is that, Gina? And is that something is it just for you, or is that something you feel that you can share with others? How does that, what is that analysis, the transcript analysis?
Okay, Atlas TI is a software package for analysis of qualitative research. So transcripts or audio files or videos. I purchased a single user license for I think about $670 out of faculty development funds. I'd like to encourage the university to have that available for qualitative researchers. I was able to take in the transcripts, mark certain codes, choose quotes for each code, and that it just helped really organize what was there. And there's also a possibility looking at some visual things like word clouds or bar charts to say how often a certain code came up. But I keep gravitating. I know Tara told me if it's qualitative, you got to stay with qualitative. I keep gravitating, like I want to count things. It does allow you to count things, but what the most important thing is that it really organizes your quotes and transcripts.
Does anybody, does anybody else want to talk about the balance? I know there's the 3 of you talked about the balance of work-life. Any other thoughts on that?
I wanted to say something real quick about SurveyMonkey, though. You can get a deluxe account for SurveyMonkey, and it has both qualitative and quantitative for discourse analysis. And then in terms of the balance, I took the slides out, but for each rank, like assistant professor, there's a formula that the department chairs develop in different universities that they want to see. And for associate professors as well as full professors. But I believe that's the job of a department chair, is to promote their faculty and to really protect that balance and to not overwork their faculty members.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to address balance. It's really, really hard to find. I too, like Nilsa, was a department chair really early on in, I think, my 2nd year of tenured track before I was tenured. And administrative work can take up all of your time. And then you've got teaching. You always use this analogy with teaching is like a solid, it fits into our 4 weeks. We have certain things to do. Our scholarship is kind of liquid. It fills up whatever space you allow it to fill up. And our service at this university is a gas, and it just keeps going, and it escapes the container. It was difficult to balance, having babies and having family that were, they need you, and life happens, and then trying to do all of this. And I did find that scholarship often is the thing that gets put aside because there's not as much of a deadline on it. So I like Nils's idea on Fridays. I write in spurts. It's like I will do, not, if I put it away, I can do nothing for a while, and then all of a sudden, like 10 pages comes out in almost as a unit. So everybody has their own style.
Well, I appreciate each of you joining and trying to eke out a little bit of your precious balance time to share with us. And the recording will be, I think, very helpful for other classes that are talking about research and the needs, as well as new faculty coming on, trying to understand. And I hope that we make connections in research ideas where we cross over. I think that there's lots of potential here. So I want to thank each of you for joining us. And I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you.
Thanks, Robin. It's been great.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Robin. Thank you, everyone, for your ideas.
Bye-bye.
It was fun.